Hello, hello, hello. Checking in with The Glss Htl by Emily St. John Mandel, her 2020 novel. Seems at this point, at least, to revolve around a brother and sister, half-brother, half-sister, Paul and Vincent. Vincent being the sister, Paul being the older drug-addicted brother. The first little section here, it's for first three sections I guess I've listened to, are it starts off with like a very fragmented short thing of Vincent, from Vincent's point of view, with her lost in time, a jumble of things, starting with the end, which is her going overboard on a ship, so perhaps drowning. And then going through various scenes, none of which, really can hit, other than the one where she kind of goes onto the boat and looks at the purser and says, "Oh, you, that's who it's going to be." Yeah. And then we go to Paul, who is her brother, who we are also skipping back and forth in time with him. It all seems to be structured around him telling a therapist, more in 2020, but it skips back in time, him talking about coming back to their place on Vancouver, I think on Vancouver Island, where the mother has died, fallen overboard or drowned or something like that. Not quite sure, or drowned herself, not quite sure. And he comes back there with his father, and yes, his mother, and I guess Vincent is the product of his mother's affair with a kind of some hippie dude artist, thus Vincent as a name, very hippie dude. Vincent van Gogh, I don't know, name, and she's sort of the sullen teenager who has done some graffiti. It's like, well, why would you do the graffiti? I don't know. I just felt like doing it and stuff like that. That will come back later because there's more graffiti in this novel so far. And we get Paul in Toronto, where he was staying, and where he was trying to get off of drugs, but taking some E, and it really kind of messing him up. But he was like really obsessed with this band, with this girl in this band, and he kept on looking for her and looking for her after that, and then finally he kind of gave up. And then it was like, oh, he gets, what happens? I can't remember. He puts on his jacket and he goes back to the club once more, and hey, there's the band that had recommended this club to him. And he makes his play for the girl who's like, I'm not interested, basically all the vibes. And she says, he makes the play, says, like, I'd really like to take you over dinner. It's like, no. It's like, oh sure. And this is, would you like some E? And so he gives him the rest of the E. And this guy, Charlie something, takes two. And an hour later, his heart stops on the dance floor and he's taken away. And she takes one, and God knows what happens to her. And he hotfoots it for Vancouver. Ah, yes, because he had been on academic probation. Yes, because he was like, he basically wanted to do an art degree, but by this point of being in rehab multiple times, no one was interested in him getting a non-productive thing. So he did finance. He ended up trying to do a finance degree instead, but he's not interested in it at all. He was basically on academic probation. So once all the E stuff goes down, he takes off for Vancouver to kind of hook up with his sister Vincent and that at this place, and with Y2K, and yes, they survive Y2K. And Vincent is very kind of an oddly detached, kind of waifish kind of figure. wearing a t-shirt with no back that's just got a string on the back, and it makes her very much seem very kind of vulnerable. And so that's that's the second section. And the third section is taken from Walter's point of view, where he's a manager at this very exclusive glass hotel in the middle of nowhere, which is 15 minutes away from Gray's Harbor, or something like that. Port Hardy, Gray's Harbor. So it's basically a 5-star hotel in the middle of nowhere for the super rich. I live down in Victoria, and I've lived in Comox, and I know, super rich people coming through to experience the glory of nature here, which, be what as it may. But what happens is that Walter, who's like, oh, I want to be away from everything. He was in Toronto. He took this thing. He's got a manager. He really loves this job. He loves being here in the middle of nowhere. And someone has done graffiti on one of these incredibly wall-to-ceiling gigantic planes of glass. And it says, why don't you eat broken glass? Is etched on there in acid marker. So it's like, it's etched in, never coming out. Of course, this happens on the night when Jonathan Almeida, the guy who actually owns the property that this hotel was on, is coming in. And who's working there but Vincent and Paul. Paul has just gotten a job vouched for by Vincent, who's doing the bar work. And he's acting kind of weird, and Walter notices this. Jonathan Almeida comes in, it all goes smoothly. He chats up a guy called Leon, and it turns out in flashbacks, Leon is yet another victim of Jonathan Almeida, who's apparently great at financials, or maybe great at taking people's money away from them for financials. So Jonathan Almeida has a conversation with him. Leon has a conversation with Vincent as well. Walter is like, it's Paul. So he goes up and he confronts him. Paul's like, I have debts. Please. It's like, get out, or else you will have a criminal record if you do not leave immediately. Get the next plane out, and I don't see you again. And so he does that, and indeed the plane of glass gets replaced for an incredible amount of money. And about a year later, Walter is like, oh, a woman's coming in, but there's a note on here that says, okay, it's like, I never want to see her. So he just checks to see, okay, well, where's Jonathan Almeida at the moment? So, I know it's safe as she's checking in. And it's like, oh no, he's at a gala with this young woman who looks strangely familiar. He zooms in, and the young woman is Vincent, in a dress that probably cost more than like a month's salary working at this thing, and very expensive makeup. It's like, all right. So either her brother wrote that, why don't you eat broken glass, or maybe she wrote that because she was doing graffiti back as a teenager, and it seemed like more of her thing to do than for Paul. So that is the first 3 sections of the Glss Htl, which it's got one of those odd things of like, oh, part of it at least is set on Vancouver Island at this hotel, which I know. Well, not in the hotel, but I know this part of the country, this part of the world. I actually know it. I know Port Hardy. I know the great vast unknown wilderness that they're talking about. When they talk about it, it's like it's going to be done in grand Vancouver style or West Coast style. I know that means cedar and lots of glass. The Glss Htl in this case. So it's funny that it's like, oh, here is, I'm surprised they haven't talked about the kind of the native carvings that they've gotten, cedar carved beautifully by native artists of the area. That would also fit in perfectly. I can visualize that. So yeah, that's the Glss Htl by Emily St. John Mandel, who was apparently born somewhere in the Comox Valley, a place I also lived. So I've got she knows probably of what she's writing. All right, more videos later.